It started 2 days before our family vacation to Clearwater Beach. My daughter Emily was packing her swimsuits and ring lights when she sighed and said, "Dad, please don't ruin my vacation photos this year. Maybe just stay behind the camera, okay?" I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. But her tone was sharp, embarrassed even. She didn't want me in the photos because I didn't fit the aesthetic. That word, aesthetic, stung more than I expected. I'm Franklin Hayes, 67 years old, retired history teacher, and apparently too old to be seen with my own daughter. My gray hair and wrinkled face didn't match her color-coordinated beach content. I smiled, nodded, and quietly promised myself something. This trip, she'd learn what real memories look like. I went back to my room and started charging every camera I owned. My old Canon, the newer digital one, even Margaret's vintage film camera that still worked perfectly after all these years. Just before you continue to watch, Joe would like you to subscribe to this channel and like this video. It would encourage him to keep his streak of thrilling revenge stories for you to watch. Alright, back to the story. Every summer since Emily was little, we took a photo together at sunset on the last day of vacation. It was our thing. Her head on my shoulder, her small hand gripping mine. My wife Margaret started that tradition when Emily was only 3 years old during our first beach trip as a family. But this year, Emily seemed determined to erase every trace of me from her carefully planned Instagram feed. She spent the entire car ride from Tampa scrolling TikTok, planning perfect shots for her 40,000 followers. Meanwhile, I watched Margaret's old camera bag sitting beside me in the back seat. It still smelled faintly of salt and sunscreen from all those years ago when my wife would spend hours finding the perfect natural light. I ran my fingers across the worn leather strap, remembering her patience and artistic eye. I decided I'd bring that bag, and one extra surprise, on this trip. Something that would remind Emily of who we used to be. When we arrived at the beach house, Emily rushed straight to the sand with her friends Madison and Tyler. All matching bikinis and selfie sticks extended like weapons. I stood there on the wooden deck, my toes itching to sink into the same beach where I once built sandcastles with her 20 years ago. She barely waved when I offered to take their group photo near the water. "It's okay, Dad," she said without looking at me, already adjusting her pose. "We've got it on timer." Her friends giggled behind their hands. I caught Madison whisper, "He's kinda cute though. Old man aesthetic." Emily's face turned bright red, not from pride in her father, but from shame at being associated with me. That night, after they all went to bed exhausted from hours of posing, I opened a new Instagram account under a name she'd never expect. I worked by the dim light of my phone, my reading glasses sliding down my nose. I called it ShutterSoul67. My bio read simply, "Retired teacher capturing the beauty others overlook." I started posting candid photos from the trip immediately. Sunsets without filters, showing the real colors of the Florida sky. Seashells arranged in natural patterns on the wet sand. Even a shot of Emily laughing with her friends when she didn't notice me watching from the porch with Margaret's old telephoto lens. No ring lights. No editing. No artificial enhancement. Just real moments frozen in time the way Margaret used to capture them during our years together. Within one day, a few strangers had commented thoughtfully, "This is the real vacation vibe." Another person wrote, "Finally, someone who gets it." No fake smiles. I smiled at my phone in the dark bedroom, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. The next morning, Emily's perfect photo hit a wall of unexpected competition she never saw coming from her own father. Emily's carefully edited shots got a few hundred likes by noon. Mine got thousands by breakfast time. Someone had shared one of my pictures, the one of her walking barefoot at dawn, carrying her sandals and smiling without posing for any camera. The caption read, "Beauty doesn't need permission." She didn't know it was my post yet. The photo spread across 3 different Facebook groups for beach photography enthusiasts. Then a Pinterest board with 50,000 followers featured it prominently. By lunch, a local newspaper account sent a direct message to ShutterSoul67 asking to feature the mystery photographer in their weekend lifestyle section. I sipped my coffee on the deck, watching Emily frantically check her phone every 30 seconds. She kept refreshing her posts, confused why her numbers weren't growing like usual. Her perfectly curated content was being ignored while my simple, honest photography gained traction. The irony wasn't lost on me as I took another sip of my morning coffee. Over breakfast at the beachside cafe, Emily's friends gushed about the viral beach photographer everyone was talking about online. Madison scrolled through her phone excitedly, her eggs getting cold. Look at this shot. It's so raw and real. No filters at all. Emily rolled her eyes, uninterested in anything that wasn't about her own content strategy. But then Madison turned the screen toward her face. Her jaw dropped open completely. "That's me," she said, voice rising above the restaurant noise. "Who took this? Where did they get it?" I sipped my orange juice across the table, pretending to scroll through weather reports on my phone screen. "Some old guy with good taste, I guess," I said casually, not looking up. Tyler zoomed in on the photo with his fingers. "Whoever it is, they're really talented. Like professional level." Emily stared at the image, her face a mixture of shock and something else. Something that looked almost like recognition dawning slowly. That night, she knocked on my hotel room door holding her phone in both trembling hands. "Dad, did you take that photo?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly with confusion and anger. I didn't lie to her. I've never lied to Emily in her entire life. "I did. You looked happy, genuinely happy for once." Her face changed from confused to angry in seconds flat. "You posted it without asking me first. That's not okay. I have a brand to protect. Sponsors have guidelines." I set down the history book I'd been reading about Florida's coastal development. "You didn't ask before cutting me out of your memories either. Before deciding I wasn't good enough for your aesthetic." Her mouth opened, but no words came out initially. She stood there in my doorway, phone still glowing in her hands, casting blue light on her face. Finally, she said, "This is different, Dad. This is my life, my career, my future income." I nodded slowly, keeping my voice level. "It used to be our life together. Remember?" She stormed off, slamming the door so hard a picture frame rattled on my dresser. But she hadn't seen what I'd posted next while she was yelling. That night, while she argued with her friends in the living room about engagement rates, I posted a photo of Margaret's camera bag sitting beside the ocean. The leather looked worn and loved, weathered by time and use. The sunset behind it painted everything gold and purple and pink. My caption read, "My late wife's bag. Our daughter is now old enough to forget where her smile began, where love taught her to see beauty." I didn't expect what happened next at all. The comments flooded in within minutes, hundreds becoming thousands. Strangers writing paragraphs about family and forgiveness and growing apart from parents. People shared stories about their own mothers and fathers. By morning, the post had hit 3 million views and been shared by 2 major photography accounts and several parenting blogs. Emily's brand sponsorship called her at breakfast, interrupting her avocado toast. Not to praise her recent work, but to ask if she was the girl from the emotional beach story going viral. The girl who forgot her father. She spent the whole morning crying in her room. I heard her through the thin walls of the beach house. Around noon, she came out, eyes red and puffy from hours of tears. "Dad, people think I'm heartless," she said, showing me her phone with shaking hands. "They're calling me ungrateful and selfish." Comments on her own posts had turned mean overnight. People connected the dots quickly. They realized ShutterSoul67 was posting from the same beach, same time. Some figured out I was her father through detective work. I didn't gloat or feel victorious about her pain. I just said quietly, "They only saw what I saw, Emily. What I've been seeing for years." Her friends Madison and Tyler suddenly had other plans, leaving a day early. They distanced themselves online immediately, afraid of the backlash spilling onto their own pages and sponsorships. I watched Emily scroll through hundreds of comments, some cruel, some kind, all of them making her question everything she'd built. That night, I found her deleting her entire influencer account, 3 years of careful work disappearing with each click and keystroke. We ate dinner in silence at the small kitchen table overlooking the dark ocean. The air between us felt heavier than Florida's thick summer humidity pressing against the windows. She barely touched her grilled chicken and vegetables. Her fork just pushed rice around her plate in slow circles, creating patterns in the sauce. "Why did you have to make it public?" she asked softly, not looking up from her plate. "Why couldn't you just talk to me privately?" I set down my own fork carefully on the edge of my plate. "I didn't make it public, Emily. The truth did. I just took honest pictures." She looked up then, and I saw tears pooling in her brown eyes, the same shade as Margaret's had been. "You embarrass me in front of everyone who follows me. My sponsors dropped me. I took a long breath, considering my next words carefully. Then I said something I hadn't said in years, something I'd kept buried deep in my chest. You embarrassed your mother first, before she died. The words hung between us like smoke that wouldn't clear. She froze completely, fork suspended in midair dripping sauce. What's that supposed to mean? Mom loved me. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. I told her about Margaret's last wish, written in her private journal just months before the cancer took her from us. That we never stop taking pictures together as a family. That we never let the world make us forget what matters beyond likes and follows. She'd written it when Emily was only 13, still young enough to hold my hand in public without shame. I've kept that promise faithfully, I said quietly, meeting her eyes across the table. Until now? Until you decided I wasn't good enough for your pictures anymore. Emily's face crumpled like paper. She pushed her chair back so hard it scraped loudly against the tile floor. She grabbed her phone off the table and disappeared out the front door into the dark night air. I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at her uneaten dinner getting cold, wondering if I'd pushed too far this time and lost her forever. By 10 o'clock at night, she still hadn't come back to the house. My guilt transformed into real panic. I searched the boardwalk, checking every ice cream shop and souvenir store still open. I called Madison and Tyler, but both sent me straight to voicemail, probably blocking my number. I even checked the lifeguard stand where she used to play as a child, climbing the wooden ladder while Margaret watched nervously. Nothing. My heart pounded against my ribs as worst-case scenarios flooded my mind. The beach at night could be dangerous for a young woman alone. Riptides, strangers, anything could happen. Then I saw a small crowd gathered near the rocky jetty at the far end of the shore. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness like a knife. It caught her figure, sitting alone on the wet rocks, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I moved faster than I had in years, my old knees protesting. When I finally reached her, breathing hard, she looked up at me. Her mascara had run down her cheeks in dark rivers. Mom's journal, she whispered through tears. You still have it? Can I see it? Back at the beach house, we sat together on the couch in the quiet living room. I retrieved the faded leather journal from my suitcase, where I'd kept it carefully wrapped in Margaret's favorite scarf. My hands shook as I opened it to the marked page I'd read 100 times. The paper had yellowed slightly with age, but Margaret's handwriting remained clear and beautiful. The entry was dated the summer before she died, her last healthy season. Emily read aloud, her voice breaking with emotion. One day Emily will want to look perfect for the world. I hope she remembers perfect isn't real. Love is. Real moments matter more than posed ones. Tears streamed down her face, dropping onto the old pages and smudging the ink slightly. I forgot, she whispered, touching her mother's words gently with one finger. I forgot everything that mattered. I forgot her. I forgot you. I nodded, my own eyes burning with unshed tears. So did I, for a while after she died. She looked at me then, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. Will you delete the photos? She asked hopefully. I told her I had one more to take first before I'd consider it. At sunrise the next morning, I set up my old tripod in the wet sand near the water. The same tripod Margaret used for our family photos every summer without fail. This time, no posing, no filters, no ring lights or perfectly arranged props in the background. Just us, father and daughter, sitting side by side as the sun painted the sky pink and orange and gold. Emily leaned her head on my shoulder exactly the way she used to when she was small and trusted me completely. Her hair smelled like coconut sunscreen, the same brand Margaret always bought from the drugstore. For the first time in years, I heard her laugh her real laugh. Not the practiced influencer laugh she'd developed for videos and sponsorships. The real one, the one that came from deep in her chest, the one I remembered from sandcastle summers and ice cream nights. I set the camera timer and ran back quickly to sit beside her. The camera clicked just as she squeezed my hand tight. I posted it that afternoon with no caption at all, letting the image speak for itself without words. Within 2 hours, the photo spread faster than any post I'd made before. People recognized her immediately as the girl who'd humbled herself, who'd learned something important about family. The comments section became a place of healing instead of hurt and accusations. This is real growth right here. This is what love looks like between generations. I hope my daughter and I find this again before it's too late. Emily read every single comment carefully, smiling through fresh tears that kept coming. She showed me the kind messages, the people sharing their own stories of reconnecting with elderly parents they'd neglected. An older woman wrote, "I lost my father last year to a heart attack. I'd give anything for one more sunset photo with him." Emily's hand found mine again on the couch. Then her phone buzzed with an email notification that made her gasp. The same newspaper that had messaged Shuttersoul 67 days ago was reaching out again with a new request. But this time, they wanted to interview both of us together for their special Father's Day feature coming up. Emily looked at me hopefully, her eyes asking permission. "Should we do it, Dad?" At the newspaper office 3 days later, Emily held my hand during the entire interview session. The reporter, a kind woman named Patricia with gray hair and glasses, asked gentle questions about our journey back to each other. Emily spoke honestly about losing her way in social media, about caring more for likes than love from real people. "My dad taught me what beauty actually means," she said, squeezing my fingers tight. "Not perfection or filters, but truth and genuine emotion." I watched shame transform into pride in her eyes as she spoke to Patricia. When the photographer took our picture for the article, Emily insisted we share credit for every image in my growing collection. "Shuttersoul 67 isn't just my dad," she told Patricia firmly. "It's both of us now. We're a team again." The article ran that Sunday with our photo on the front page of the lifestyle section in color. But later that same evening, another email arrived in my inbox. This one from a gallery curator in Miami named Vincent. My hands shook as I read it out loud to Emily while she made us tea in the kitchen. The curator's message said, "Your series captures generational love in a digital age perfectly. The rawness and authenticity are remarkable and deeply moving. We would love to feature your work in our summer exhibition next month." I sat back in my chair, completely stunned by the offer. Me? A retired history teacher from Tampa who'd never sold a photograph in his life? Emily grabbed my shoulders excitedly from behind. "Dad, you have to do it. This is incredible. This is like a real gallery." Her enthusiasm reminded me of when she was young, running home from school to show me her art projects with paint on her hands. She immediately started talking about layouts and presentation, her social media skills suddenly useful for something meaningful instead of shallow. For once, her practiced eye for aesthetics had room for me in the frame instead of excluding me. I smiled at her renewed energy, but held up one hand to slow her down. "I'll agree to the exhibition," I said slowly, choosing my words. "But I have one small condition that's non-negotiable." Her face became serious, ready to negotiate. I could see Margaret's determination in her expression and the set of her jaw. "We show everything," I told her firmly, meeting her eyes. "Not just the pretty parts. Even the mistakes, the arguments, the deleted account, all of it together." Emily hesitated, biting her lower lip the way she'd done since childhood when making hard decisions. The gallery would see her at her worst, her most vain, her cruelest. Finally she nodded, her jaw set with new resolve I hadn't seen before. "Deal. The whole truth, no hiding." We spent the next 2 weeks curating photos together at the kitchen table covered in prints. Joy and pain side by side in careful arrangement. Laughter next to silence and tears. Pictures of her crying on the rocks that night. Screenshots of cruel comments people had written. Then images of reconciliation, of healing, of love remembering itself slowly. Each photograph told part of our story of two people learning to see each other again through clearer lenses, without filters. The night before the exhibition opening, I was organizing prints into final sequence when something fell from her old camera case onto the floor. A sealed envelope with my name written in Emily's teenage handwriting from years ago. My hands trembled as I opened the letter carefully, not wanting to tear it. The paper inside was old, the edges soft from years of hiding in that case. It was addressed to me in Emily's careful script from when she was about 16 years old. "Dad, I'm sorry I treated you like a filter instead of family. You're my favorite photo I ever took with Mom's camera." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes completely. I hadn't realized until that moment how much I'd missed hearing the word Dad said with real love, instead of teenage obligation or adult dismissal. The letter continued with memories of our sunset photos, of Margaret teaching her to see light and shadow properly, of feeling safe in our small family unit. She'd written it after a fight we'd had about her spending too much time on her phone even back then. I slipped the letter into my coat pocket, right over my heart where I could feel it. The next evening at the gallery, surrounded by strangers looking at our story displayed on white walls, Emily asked if I'd let her give the opening speech to the crowd. I couldn't find words, so I just nodded yes. Under the bright gallery lights, Emily stood before a crowd of over 100 people holding wine glasses. Her voice shook at first, but grew stronger with each word she spoke. I used to think followers made memories, she said clearly into the microphone. My dad taught me that memories make followers. Real moments create real connections. The room erupted in applause that echoed off the high ceilings and concrete floors. I stood in the back corner, wiping my eyes with the handkerchief Margaret embroidered for me 30 years ago with my initials. Several people approached afterward to shake my hand and share how our story touched their families deeply. An elderly man with white hair told me he'd called his daughter for the first time in 5 years after seeing our photos online. A mother hugged Emily and thanked her for being brave enough to change. I whispered to myself what I'd been thinking all evening while watching strangers connect with our pain and healing. Your mother would have been so proud of you, Emily. So very proud. As the crowd began to thin out, a man approached holding an old film camera I recognized immediately. Margaret's first camera, the one she'd sold to pay for Emily's braces when money was tight. He introduced himself as Vincent, one of Margaret's photography students from 20 years ago at the community college. Your wife was my teacher and my inspiration, he said softly with reverence. She once told me you were her muse, that you saw her like no one else did. These photos prove it runs in the family bloodline. Then he reached into his worn leather bag and handed me something precious. A small flash drive with a label written in Margaret's distinctive handwriting. For Franklin. When she's ready. My throat closed up completely, unable to form words. She gave this to me a week before she passed away, Vincent explained gently. Made me promise to give it to you only when Emily understood what really mattered. I held the drive like it might shatter in my shaking hands. Emily appeared at my side immediately, her eyes wide with curiosity and something like fear. What is it, Dad? What's on there? I didn't open it right away that night. My hands shook too much to function properly. That night back at the hotel room, Emily urged me gently to plug it into my laptop. I took a deep breath and inserted the drive with trembling fingers. The screen filled with thumbnail images, hundreds of small squares. I clicked on the first folder labeled, For the Future, in Margaret's handwriting. Photographs appeared one after another in a slideshow. Margaret's last project, a secret documentation of our family during her final year of life. There were candid shots of me making pancakes on Sunday mornings, of Emily doing homework at the kitchen table with her tongue sticking out, of all three of us laughing at something long forgotten now. Margaret must have set timers and hidden cameras around our house to capture these moments without us knowing. She'd been saying goodbye in the only way she knew how, through her art, through her lens and her vision. The final image made both Emily and me gasp out loud simultaneously. It showed Emily as a little girl, maybe 6 years old, sitting on my shoulders at this exact beach in Clearwater. Both of us laughing under a sunset identical to the one we'd just recreated weeks ago. Emily sobbed beside me, her whole body shaking. She knew, my daughter whispered in amazement. She knew this would happen, that we'd need to find our way back to each other eventually. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat blocking air. Margaret had always been 3 steps ahead of everyone, seeing futures even the cancer couldn't steal from her mind. Emily wiped her eyes and picked up her phone with shaking hands, staring at the screen. Can I post one? She asked me quietly. Not for likes or sponsors, but for memory. For Mom and what she wanted. I nodded and watched her select the photo of young Emily on my shoulders from Margaret's secret collection. She typed a simple caption with no hashtags or brand tags or strategic keywords. For Mom. For Dad. For what's real beyond the screen. She hit post and set her phone face down on the desk immediately. The notification sounds started immediately, dinging constantly, but she didn't check them once. The post would eventually break her personal record within an hour, reaching millions, but she never looked at the numbers. Instead, she sat beside me on the hotel bed, her head finding that familiar spot on my shoulder. Together we watched the sun sink below the Miami skyline through our hotel window in comfortable silence. I reached into my pocket and pulled out something small and metallic I'd been carrying for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. It was Margaret's old camera keychain, a tiny silver Nikon she'd carried everywhere on her keys. Emily used to play with it as a toddler, making clicking sounds and pretending to take pictures of her stuffed animals and toys. I'd kept it in my desk drawer for 14 years, unable to look at it without breaking down completely. Emily gasped when she saw it in my palm, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. "I remember this," she breathed in wonder. Mom let me hold it while she worked in her darkroom developing film. I pressed the small keychain into her palm and closed her fingers around it gently. "Now it's yours to keep. Keep it close and keep it honest like she did." She looked down at the keychain, then up at me, her brown eyes swimming with tears and something else now. Peace, maybe, or understanding finally taking root. "Always, Dad," she promised, her voice steady despite the tears running down. "I promise." She attached it to her keys immediately, the metal clinking. Then she looked at me with a soft smile I hadn't seen in years. "Next summer, you pick the vacation destination. Anywhere you want to go." We returned to Clearwater Beach the next year, just the two of us without anyone else. No friends, no ring lights, no pressure to perform for invisible audiences watching online. We spent our days walking the shoreline collecting shells and telling stories about Margaret that Emily had been too young to remember. Emily asked questions she'd been too young or scared to ask before about everything. About how we met in college, about Margaret's dreams of traveling, about the scared young father I'd been at 25. No phones interrupted our conversations or stole our attention. No posed photos stole our presence from the moment we were living. She took exactly one picture that entire week of vacation together. Me standing barefoot in the tide, hands in my pockets, smiling at something funny she'd said about my hair. It never went online to any platform. She printed it at a local shop and framed it in a simple black frame she bought. It hangs in her living room now, above her couch where everyone who visits can see it clearly. And beneath it, she wrote in tiny careful letters with a permanent marker, "He didn't ruin my photos. He gave the meaning I'd forgotten existed." If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, comment, and smash the subscribe button. Also check out other videos on the channel. Joe's got more interesting stories for you.